Now, the main study that they're hoping to do will actually take a look at the soil that is around wildfires all throughout our region.
People laughed at the plan at first. The move sounded wild, and it seemed like a joke. 1 month later, all of that changed. We are yet to know what happened after. The outcome surprised many who mocked the first action. But here's the thing. Those bees weren't just released. They were practically abandoned in one of the harshest environments on Earth. No shade, no nectar, no nearby water. Everyone expected a collapse. But instead, something far stranger began to happen. What could possibly survive under those odds? The release. Workers arrived early and set down trailers on the ground. They unloaded wooden boxes that held bee frames. They lifted their lids, rolled back cloth covers, and placed the boxes on some stands. The sound of wings rose as bees clustered at entrances and began to fly. Some boxes were not placed in the shade, while others were covered. They then put lots of water for the bees in big drums and set out buckets and poured sugar syrup. Beekeepers always have to be cautious when moving many hives, and there are procedures they have to follow, such as including covered transport, making planned stops, and taking rest. In this case, they did not follow the procedures. Frames were exposed, queen cages handled in the open air, and boxes left while foragers flew away. Open hives in heat push bees to search for water and food quickly. Desert plants do not produce enough nectar and pollen. Forager bees circled low to search for flowers and moisture. Beekeepers of that area said the nearest reliable water was quite far. When water is scarce, worker bees spend more time flying and less time collecting nectar, which weakens the colony. The temperature in the desert is always low. We all know that heat changes how a hive behaves. Bees bring water to cool the interior and fan with their wings to move air. Brood needs stable warmth to develop. When a colony cannot cool itself, the brood suffers, and queens may reduce egg laying. Keepers later reported brood that looked thin and spotty, a sign that feeding was not enough for the young. Handling many colonies together raises risks. Close boxes let workers drift between hives. Strong colonies steal food from the weak, which spreads pests and disease. Experienced beekeepers space hives and offer them security. At the site, many boxes shared the same small area without barriers, so movement between boxes was higher than normal. Predators and scavengers noticed. Ants reached the syrup. Beetles found exposed frames, and birds hovered near the stands. Workers cleaned frames on site, but comb repair and brood care take a long time. When weak hives lose stores, they need time and a lot of food to rebuild. Beekeepers arrived to help. They carried water tanks from nearby yards and set out shaded covers. Volunteers learnt to pour syrup at a safe distance and to set water points away from walking paths to avoid having bees gather near people's homes. Keepers inspected queen status, inspected the stores, and checked for mites. The inspection was to help determine which colonies could be saved on site and which needed to be combined or moved. The choice to place many hives in a bare space had immediate effects. Worker bees left in search of water and food. Queens slowed their laying. Weak colonies lost momentum. The whole activity had setbacks. The trucks had carried the hives for many hours before arrival. Hives looked like they had been on the road. Some boxes showed light wear from travel. Queen cages were sometimes unmarked. Frames in several boxes had little capped honey and a thin layer of stores. That suggested colonies had not fed well during transportation. Crew members later said they shifted boxes and checked on the queens quickly after opening the lids. Those checks helped, but could not replace the type of care and attention they needed. But the early inspections only scratched the surface. Hidden inside the boxes was a bigger story, one that no quick fix could solve. Were these bees already too far gone before they even arrived at the site? Immediate reaction. At first, many people treated the event as a strange stunt. Neighbors laughed and could not stop talking about it. The laughter did not last long after a serious problem was reported by beekeeping professionals who went to the site. Skilled keepers looked at hives and saw stressed colonies. They cited low stores on frames and queens that appeared to slow egg laying. The experienced beekeepers brought more water tanks, shade cloth, and sugar syrup. These hands-on responses followed the needed guidelines, which are providing water, reducing heat, and feeding weak colonies. Volunteers learnt to place water points away from footpaths so bees did not crowd human activity. The people who came to help measured the frames, checked the brood, and marked boxes needing repair. Their work aimed to stabilize colonies so they could be moved or treated later. The Nevada Department of Agriculture and the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension issued a public statement. State staff outlined basic safety steps and reminded owners to register apiary locations. Extension staff gave practical advice on feeding and checking for parasites. Officials urged caution near the site and advised people who suffer from allergic reactions to seek medical help. Medical staff and emergency responders monitored the area. Clinics warned residents to avoid the immediate site if they had severe allergies to bee stings. Local emergency services posted guidance about keeping doors and windows shut and about having antihistamines or epinephrine available for known allergic individuals. The presence of many bees near the roads and homes raised public safety concerns that required coordination between agricultural officials and health services. Farmers and orchard owners followed the updates closely. Many crops depend on reliable pollination at certain periods of the year. Agricultural operations began to assess how a sudden loss or weakness in nearby honeybee colonies might affect contracts and crop yields. Some farm operators contacted pollination contractors to confirm hive counts and to protect planned pollination events. Concern over the future availability of healthy colonies created early discussion about backup plans. Business owners adjusted operations. Roadside cafes moved outdoor seating indoors. Lodging offices warned guests to stay clear of certain trails. Small shops changed delivery points to avoid areas where bees clustered. Community groups organized quickly. Beekeeping clubs and farmers set up schedules to take turns at the site. They checked which boxes needed immediate attention and which required longer care. The rotation reduced fatigue among them and kept measures consistent. Farmers were trained to feed syrup without creating robbing situations and to spot signs of mite infestation that require lab testing. Reports of pest pressure reached experienced keepers. When many colonies gather, stress levels rise, and pests like Varroa destructor can spread faster. Keepers sampled mite levels by testing fallen mite counts and using standard checks on frames. Those tests guided treatment choices and decisions about which colonies to combine. The goal was to limit the spread while restoring colony strength where possible. Public records searches followed. Reporters and residents asked state offices for transport records and permits. People wanted to know who authorized moving so many hives and whether proper notifications were filed. Where transport manifests and registration details were not clear, investigators could trace responsibility. Economic concerns surfaced as maintenance costs rose. Fuel, replacement frames, medication for pests, and labor all added to recovery bills. Some small keepers struggled to pay immediate expenses and sought help from larger operations or community funds. Larger commercial beekeepers calculated potential revenue loss if many colonies required weeks of recovery, or if pollination contracts could not be met. The public mood shifted from mockery to a focus on logistics and loss. Conversations moved from jokes to questions about who was responsible, what records exist, and how many colonies could survive. People who had laughed at first now monitored the site updates closely. The combined response of volunteers, keepers, state staff, farmers, and health workers created a coordinated effort to limit harm and to document the event for later review. Insurers and contract holders entered the picture. Some beekeepers filed claims for lost colonies and damaged equipment. Contract language about delivery and the condition of hives became central in talks between farmers and providers. County agricultural offices began collecting statements and evidence to support any claims. Lab reports on disease and parasite levels were scheduled so insurers and regulators could assess losses. The added paperwork increased pressure on small keepers who needed time and outside help. But as the paperwork piled up and officials combed through reports, one question hung heavy in the air. What if the real damage wouldn't show until weeks later? 1 month later, the regret. 30 days after the release, the scene looked different. What began as a single event had stretched into weeks of work and worry for many people. At first, quick repairs helped some colonies survive. Over the month, the cost of those repairs grew higher. Volunteer crews and professional keepers moved water drums, replaced broken frames, and mixed sugar syrup into large buckets. Those steps kept some hives breathing, but they did not restore full strength to all colonies. Bees that arrived, stressed from transport and heat, struggled to rebuild stores. Worker bees that had flown long hours returned with little nectar. Young broods that needed consistent feeding showed gaps in the comb. Several beekeepers reported that queens had slowed egg laying or had been lost. When a queen reduces laying, the colony cannot grow its worker population fast enough to recover. Pest pressure increased where many colonies clustered in one place. Varroa mite counts rose in several sample tests taken by the keepers. Where mite numbers rose, colonies weakened and disease moved more easily. Beekeepers separated weak boxes from stronger ones to slow the spread. That work required testing, treatment plans, and time. Not every hive could be saved by these efforts. Economic loss became visible. Small-scale keepers described weeks of unpaid labor, hauling water and buying supplies. Commercial operators calculated losses in terms of fewer healthy colonies available for rent during pollination season. Some farmers who had booked pollination services began to look for alternatives. The cost of replacing lost colonies, buying new queens, and treating pests puts pressure on household budgets and on business plans. Record-keeping turned into a practical need. Beekeepers and state offices collected inspection reports, transport logs, and pictures to document damage. Those records supported claims for payment or for help. Where there was no documentation, owners faced difficulty proving when and how hives were moved and what condition they arrived in. Clear records helped some operations get emergency assistance or loan offers from agricultural groups. Local plant life also showed early signs of change. In spots where many bees had been concentrated, visits to flowers dropped as colonies weakened. Some desert shrubs that bloom for short periods received fewer pollination visits. Scientists and extension agents said monitoring should continue for months to see lasting effects. Short-term shifts in pollination can change seed set for certain plants that rely on timely visits. Community response remained strong. Beekeeping clubs scheduled rounds of care. Teams rotated feeding tasks to keep work stable. Training sessions taught volunteers how to check brood frames, how to set clean water stations, and how to spot high mite counts. School groups and local charities donated supplies and helped move materials. That community effort reduced immediate losses and kept many boxes from collapsing completely. Health concerns stayed alive. Emergency departments kept watch for increased calls about stings. Clinics advised residents with severe allergies to carry epinephrine and to avoid the areas still busy with bees. Public advisories warned hikers and drivers to give space around hive stands. Those notices aimed to keep people safe, while keepers focused on recovery. Legal and insurance conversations developed. Contract terms for pollination and hive rental were examined. Some farmers and beekeepers filed claims for lost colonies and damaged equipment. County agricultural offices advised parties on how to document losses. Lawyers and mediators began early talks in a few cases where contracts had strict delivery rules and where disagreement over responsibility arose. A month of recovery showed a number of outcomes. Many colonies survived, but at reduced strength. Some hives collapsed despite effort. The total count of healthy colonies available for work dropped in the area for the season ahead. That shortfall forced owners and farm operators to adjust their plans and budgets. Officials from the Nevada Department of Agriculture and staff at the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension visited the site during that month. They offered inspection guidance, recommended testing for pests, and helped coordinate volunteer teams. Those visits produced checklists and reports that local keepers used to plan treatment and to record progress. People who had first treated the event as a joke now talked about long nights of care and days of hauling supplies. The public tone shifted from mockery to concern as the scale of recovery needs became clear. Cleanup and recovery stretched beyond 30 days in many places. Experts advise that monitoring continue for several seasons to track colony health and local pollination trends. Some beekeepers joined forces to breed new queens on site, while others ordered replacement stock from established breeders in neighboring states. Those actions cost time and money, but they helped restore a portion of the lost pollination capacity. But even with all these desperate efforts, the real mystery remained unsolved. If so many hands worked to restore the bees, why did the entire operation collapse so quickly? Why it failed? The operation failed because basic needs for honeybee colonies were not met at scale. Bees need a good food supply, clean water, shelter, and careful handling during and after travel. When one of these is missing, a colony will weaken. At the Nevada site, the balance between need and supply tipped toward loss. Water was the main shortage. In hot weather, bees carry water to cool the brood and to mix with stored honey. If water is far away, foragers spend more energy and return with less food. Keepers reported few water points and many bees flying long distances to find moisture. Another reason is thin forage. Desert shrubs and short seasonal flowers do not provide enough nectar. Worker bees often returned with little to none. Without reliable forage, queens slowed egg-laying, and colonies could not grow. Transport and handling added stress. Professional moves keep boxes closed, secure queens, and plan stops with shade and water. Here, boxes were opened in the heat, and frames saw heavy disturbance. Queens in open cages risk heat stress. Exposed frames lose stores faster when workers must cool and defend the comb. Crowding also raised new risks. When many hives sit close together, workers drift between boxes and rob weak colonies, spreading pests and bacteria quickly. At the site, high box density increased contact and made containment harder. Pest pressure rose under stress. Varroa mites are a constant threat to honeybees. Keepers who tested for mites reported higher counts inside many boxes after the placement. Delayed treatment lets colonies lose workers faster and fail to sustain brood. Queen problems followed. Queens under heat or stress often reduce laying. Some queens were lost or replaced. Replacing queens takes time. When many colonies need new queens at once, the supply tightens and recovery slows. The queen's health is central to a colony regaining strength. Also, predators and scavengers did damage. Ants attacked the syrup and invaded the boxes. Small hive beetles and beetle larvae were found in weak comb. Birds and mammals scavenged brood in exposed frames. Those pressures lengthened repair work and raised costs. Human error and poor planning mattered. Moving hundreds of hives needs coordination. Paperwork helps trace responsibility and ensures permits and notices are in place. In this case, the records were incomplete and coordination appeared thin. That gap slowed response and made it harder to provide timely aid. Scale made small faults large. One weak hive is repairable with feeding and shade. Hundreds of weak colonies multiply the need for water, food, medicine, and labor. Logistics become heavy. Fuel, sugar, and labor costs climb fast. Small keepers may lack the money and equipment to handle such a scale. Equipment wear made recovery harder, another challenge faced. Frames with sticky or fermented stores need replacement. Cloth covers and wooden boxes show travel damage. Replacing the foundation, ordering new queens, and treating mites add to the recovery cost. Many keepers faced bills for supplies and extra labor in the weeks after the event. Legal and contract issues added strain. Pollination agreements and rental contracts rely on delivery dates and healthy colony counts. When many hives lose strength, owners and renters face disputes about payments and obligations. County agricultural offices began to gather inspection records and transport logs to help resolve claims. Fixing the problem needed steps, such as providing reliable water points, feeding colonies with sugar syrup, testing and treating for mites, replacing failing queens, and combining weak boxes with stronger colonies. Those steps require time, skill, and money. Where planning and resources are missing, the process slows and losses grow. In short, the failure came from missing water, scarce forage, rough handling, pest pressure, queen issues, crowding, and weak logistics. Official responses and what happened. State officials from the Nevada Department of Agriculture visited the site within days. Staff inspected hives for pests and disease and documented the condition of boxes and frames. Technicians from the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension advised on sampling for Varroa mites and recommended treatment options where counts were high. County agricultural agents coordinated volunteer teams and organized water and feeding stations to reduce immediate stress on colonies. Inspectors collected transport records and asked owners for registration details to trace responsibility. Response teams arranged for weak colonies to be combined with stronger ones and ordered replacement queens from regional suppliers when needed. Damaged frames and infested equipment were removed to limit pest spread. Training sessions taught bee farmers safe feeding methods for keeping them. State staff updated guidance on hive movement and reminded beekeepers to register apiaries and keep transport logs. Leaders scheduled follow-up inspections and testing for several weeks to monitor recovery and to record outcomes for possible claims. Community groups and beekeeping associations reported donations of fuel, syrup, and materials to support the recovery effort and cover immediate costs. Nevada's bee release turned from a joke into a cautionary tale of survival, collapse, and human error. But was it doomed from the start? Or could smarter planning have saved it? Should fragile ecosystems ever host experiments like this? And most importantly, if bees couldn't thrive here, what does that mean for our own survival in a changing climate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting videos.